Welcome to the Meme Ranch. This is XVALA. I'm here with Kaylin and Leon, and I want to set the table for you. Tonight we have a debate between JD Vance and Walz, and the stakes are very high. We're at a time of crisis, and it is the millennials versus the boomers. Walsh is a boomer. His politics is a boomer politics. JD Vance is a millennial. He's going to represent the future, millennial politics. Now, why this is a debate between millennials and boomers is because boomer politics has ruled America for the last decades. And what we've seen with RFK coming to the MAGA movement, we're seeing the end of boomer politics. So this is something we want to highlight in tonight's debate.
So let's get into what's happening right now live as we talk.
Allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall
We're just attacking each other
near
for tweeting
U.S.
now.
troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote
Where was
it off
Biden?
as headaches. Look, our allies understand
Where was Kamala?
that Donald Trump
Yeah.
is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the
Steady
U.S. did have a
leadership,
diplomatic
all right.
deal
Very
with
steady.
Iran to
Talking point,
temporarily
talking
pause
point.
parts of
That's
its
funny.
nuclear program, and President Trump
That's
did
rich,
exit
dude.
that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite
We should
extraordinary.
not
You
be getting in a
yourself
war
just
with
said
Iran.
Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blamed Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets,
Look how grumpy
but
Walz looks right
effective,
now.
smart
He does.
diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very
Hey,
broken
Governor
world.
Walz.
Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last
agree.
time
No.
that an American president didn't have a major
way.
conflict
Whoa,
break
we got a
out?
donation?
The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was
Yo,
president.
thanks for the dono.
Dude,
There's a
thanks
lot
for the
to get to.
motherfucking
Wait, wait.
dono,
Margaret,
cuz.
thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene.
go.
No,
The
that's
storm
that's
could
Benny
become
Johnson.
one of
I
the
was about to
deadliest
say,
on
what the
record.
fuck?
More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate
could use
change
those
makes these
donos, though.
hurricanes larger,
Yeah,
stronger,
that was just a
and more
soft
deadly
advertisement,
because of
you know,
the
to
historic
and your
rainfall.
buckaroonies over here.
Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking
Millennials.
steps to try and reduce climate change.
Millennials.
Senator, what
You guys need to chime in
responsibility
on this.
would the Trump administration have to try and reduce
Gen Z wants
the
nothing
impact
to do with
of
Republicans.
climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all,
Sadly.
let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable,
Good to go into the
unspeakable human
hurricane.
tragedy. I
Straight-
just saw
straight into
today
it.
actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed
Oh,
and those
God.
innocent people
These-
lost their lives. And I
These
thought
are
it was
millennial
amazing.
parents raising raising their kids in this time of crisis. So I just want to point that out.
Prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally.
Bump that
in
up just a
Appalachia, all
smidge.
across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions. This idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true.
Weird
Well,
science.
if you believe that, what
I
would
know
you,
what he's
what would
talking
you
about.
do?
I've heard that.
They're getting at a good attack line that I think is working really well in the climate shit, because I know for a fact that we have seen polar bear populations increase over the last 20, 30 years. And
Hell yeah.
polar bears are thriving more than they were ever in the 1960s. So obviously global natural disasters happen, but we have to just know how to mitigate them after they happen, you know, predict them, whatever. But we can't like stifle ourselves.
Kayla, let's put it in the context of what we're talking here at Meme Ranch: millennial versus boomer politics. Boomer politics has been
Governor Walz, you
very
have 2 minutes to
hawkish
respond.
on trying to control human activity on Earth because of climate change. Maybe now it's
Right.
time for millennials to have a different, maybe smarter approach to how we talk about it, like Vance was just doing.
Yeah, and I'll say this lastly before we go back in. I mean, millennials have been told by boomers for the longest time, essentially, that they need to get off their lazy asses and start doing work. But in some ways, it's not to give a handout to millennials that haven't put in the legwork, but there has been sort of a glass barrier that the boomer class have put in place. And, you know, not to, you know, suggest that all boomers are bad per se, but it's the people like Tim Walz, you know, who are trying to keep that glass ceiling intact for just another couple more years.
Boomers don't want to let go of their political power, and they use things like climate change to just grasp and keep hold of the narrative so they can keep in control of everything.
We want to make Webbles happy.
Has created jobs all across the country. 2000 in
Happy
Jeffersonville,
gas
Ohio,
wibbles, galaxy gas
taking
wibbles.
the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North
galaxy
America
gas
sits
to
in
you.
Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural
What'd you
gas
say,
and
wind?
more oil at any time than we
Harvesting
ever
the
have.
wind.
We're also producing more clean energy.
The wind.
It's a weird way to put it.
The solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact
We
is
need
absolutely
the boomer
critical,
narrative.
but
Climate
this
change
not
is
a
real.
false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the
What
jobs that
are
we're
the
seeing
millennials
all
gonna come back
across the
with?
country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start
Benny
thinking
show.
about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give
Look,
you
guys,
an
I'm
opportunity
Benny.
to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in
Gonna bring in
particular
some
Kamala
tweets.
Harris and her leadership, if they really
This is Benny. I'm Benny right now. Am I giving good input?
Yeah, you are.
Am I creating good content? Hold on, wait.
You just have to be yourself. You're a millennial, so we need your input as a millennial.
I'm not a millennial.
Wait, what happened to the
Check-
feed?
Check this out.
What's going on? Oh,
Damn, he brought the blue.
The blue
steel.
steel.
tonight.
Blue steel.
I really want to hear his response to that.
Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Wind. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks
more
that
like
are
Venezuelan tar.
These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding.
I call it Venezuelan tar. We need to be getting the American gold oil.
Cannot be topsoil.
Trying to get
from
fucking
these
farmers on
storms. We saw
to
it
turn
in Minnesota
liberal
this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take—
You're never going to bury every power line. That's so expensive.
Say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret.
It used to be that
we're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico
that was
keep moving the
goalposts at one time.
Now they're like, the Earth is hot as fuck, man.
For American voters. Senator
Goalposts keep
Vance,
shifting around.
Your campaign
Ever heard
is
of
pledging
Copernicus?
to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history.
I gotta run naked outside the streets just to be cool.
To do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens,
He's staring down at his small
massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has
God damn it, I don't know how to use fucking OBS.
People who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations.
That's true.
And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing
maybe that could be a millennial talking point. We talk about
a million
when we talk about climate, we talk about nuclear.
Some form of crime.
Young people.
Illegally.
I'm saying
with
young climate activists are loving nuclear.
I want to know what millennials have to say about this, not what we've been saying for the past 20, 30, 40 years during boomer politics. There's been no Gen X politics.
And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans
I'm just laughing at Walz's
she came into office.
I'm just laughing at fucking Benny just standing there.
Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies.
Man.
I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Say something.
Governor.
Stupid fuck. Benny.
Is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children.
The drug mules.
That is a good hard question for him.
About the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio.
After the highest increase the month before.
Let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this. And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle.
He's not super conservative.
Democrats and Republicans were
He's a lesser of two evil guys.
The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because
as soon as I was about to conquer world hunger, Donald Trump was standing there around the corner and stop the whole thing. He's such a mean. He ruined it all.
Look, we have the options to do this.
My boy Vance should have wore a fucking pimped out fucking suit. I'm talking all purple and gold, baby.
I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it.
I'm a pimp named
Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling him what he was going to do. As far as the deportation
this is
plan,
the boomer
point,
response. I want to hear JD Vance's Millennial response.
So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, like will you separate parents from their children,
he's like
even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop.
Vance is sharp, I have to say. He just
doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo
the couch
Donald
jokes
Trump's
are really working
policy.
now, huh,
She
buddy?
did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country.
Floor with him.
And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up.
Talk about
Governor,
school choice.
That's
a millennial trend.
Our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this.
It really does.
That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor
he's doubling down
said,
on this.
It's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come
cat
together.
memes are going to come back.
Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to
who was sharing all the cat memes about Springfield?
To escort kindergartners to school.
Millennials.
I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first.
Somebody think of Springfield.
The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement.
Shout out Matt again. Thanks for tuning in on X. That is awesome.
You've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back
more
through
X
proper
viewers out
channels.
there, so
Now,
appreciate
Governor
you.
Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans.
The boomers already have their
scarce
houses.
homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the
They bought it
American
for fucking
citizens
$2.
who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree
I'm
with
helping
you.
my
I think you
landlord
want to
pay
solve this
his
problem,
mortgage.
but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time
No
is up.
way.
Governor,
That's
you
true.
have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about
I'm
Wall
actually
Street
blaming the
speculators buying
Democrat
up housing
Party,
and
not
making
the
them
migrants.
less affordable. But it
No
becomes
kidding,
a
man.
blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate.
Yeah, if I'm one of those
I agree.
migrants,
It should
like
not
if I
take
had
7 years for an asylum claim to be done.
if I had
This bill gets it
no
done in 90 days.
origination in America and I just heard that migrants were allowed into the United States like super easy, I would go in a heartbeat. And I don't blame people who are doing that. I blame the people who are allowing such loose policies for getting those people in here. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
it's funded.
in the future we're gonna meet people in our lives and we'll like find out about their origins and like where they came from, and they'll be known as like a generation of like immigrants who like came in during like the Biden
Some of them need to be blamed, Kaylin, because not all of them are virtuous. Some come here and do bad things.
Absolutely.
So you do have to separate. Some do bear blame.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. But I just gotta like say that it's almost like predatory policies, like they're preying on stupid people from across the pond to try to goad them over here, and some of those stupid people are also very dangerous too. So I agree with you on that.
And I like how they like to they want to frame Vance as if like he's a villain, or because they're quote unquote dehumanizing them, when in fact that's not what they're doing. They're looking at the reality of what is happening right now. It's different. We're not creating some fantasy here.
Wait, so something's going on.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
I can hear him.
We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for
It's not like that happened to us yesterday.
Thank
or
you,
anything.
Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic
they need
plan.
future
So let's talk
Democrats.
about the specifics.
Spot on,
Governor
Matt.
Walz, Vice President
Matt.
Harris unveiled a
Thanks for
plan that
joining.
includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing.
Hopefully the millennials
housing,
and
a renewed
Zoomers do
child
not
tax
fall for
credit.
that.
The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's
They don't have to be
deficit
Republicans
by
either,
$1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy.
So did
That's what
Vance.
this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala
Vance
Harris
is
put
getting skinnier.
out there is talking about this housing issue.
It's time for
The
him.
one thing
He's
is
trying to
there's
get on his
3
cut
million
right
new
now.
houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you a house. A
Leon.
house is much
All
more
protein, babe.
than just an asset to be traded
No fat.
somewhere. It's foundational to
Eggs
where
and
you're at.
bison.
And then making sure that the
He
things
said,
you
"Fuck
buy
that
every day,
Ozempic,
whether they
man."
be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this.
Yeah,
law
Thanks,
went into
man.
effect.
Thanks,
Appreciate
man.
it.
As far as the housing goes,
Yeah, and our
appreciate you
sound-
joining.
Minnesota,
Our sound
12%
is
more
all
houses in Minneapolis,
rigged up,
prices went
super
down
nice
on rent
thanks to
4%.
Leon
It's
over here.
working. And
I
then
tried.
making sure
Right there.
tax cuts go
That
to the
guy
middle
right there.
class. $6,000 child tax credit. We have one in Minnesota.
Do we
Reduces,
sound buttery to you guys?
childhood
Leave,
poverty by
leave a
third.
comment
We
if our
save
voices
money in
sound
the long
buttery.
run,
Not
and we
in
do
like
the
a
right
weird
thing
way,
for
but
families.
just
And then getting businesses
let-
off the ground. The
let us
law
know
as
if the
it
sound
stands
has
right now is
improved from your all's
$5,000 tax
perspective.
credit for
Hillbilly
small
Elegies,
business,
the real
increasing
shit,
that
man.
to $50,000. Now Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago. He said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing
that's all. JD Vance just say you're a communist.
Consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you.
A subtle thing, but it's so interesting. Like,
do the things she wants to do.
JD Vance is definitely a note taker.
Pay their fair share.
Donald Trump would never take a note on stage.
More people are participating in it, and folks.
He does like to shoot from the gun, though.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase
We've been working hard on it.
Deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer.
A bucketload of money to Ukraine.
Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear: is that Kamala Harris has already
I don't want to go to war.
She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies.
That's right.
And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%.
A lot of millennials are anti-war.
Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris
let them fight the war over there. We don't need to be involved.
Middle-class
problems, they can kill each other.
Then she ought to do them now.
Unfortunately,
not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans. And they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense.
Stop reading that book.
Because Donald Trump's economic policies have delivered the highest.
Just so you guys know, we do an audio version of some of these streams on the podcast, the Meme Ranch podcast.
And to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017.
This is such a better debate than the last one.
Unlike we've seen.
Yeah, and not even like a fear-mongering thing, like the Project 2025 tax plan is exactly pretty much what he's talking about here. And like, it would basically encourage you to earn more money, because there's a lot of people who stay below a certain tax bracket, because if they start making like $100,000, it jumps just crazy.
Oh yeah, that's a real thing. That's right.
Yeah, so it's like you have a choice to make, and if you're taxing the 100,000 bracket less, then it encourages more people to take higher paying jobs. You know, there's a lot of incentive to stay in a bottom tax bracket.
Since the Great Depression, 9 million jobs closed
based on the current tax policy.
Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts. Said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump.
Boomer.
And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years?
I'm Tim Walz, and I just want to say a message to all my trans folks out there.
That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China,
this is what I'm talking about.
Goods.
Boomer politics versus millennial politics, writ large, right here.
Off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America
now the millennials are saying you've had your way for 40 years
in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it.
Let go of power.
For the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to
Walz
experts.
looks at the camera like he's a deer in the headlights every once in a while.
Wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look,
you just said you did.
Soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my community, and we talked about that.
We love you.
People undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas.
Was he saying that because he was a venture capitalist?
He's like, okay, dude.
Oh no, we got screen limited. No,
it'll be right back.
Okay.
Did he mention
what Tim Walz is doing? And I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
Double jab, stomach punch.
Who would sometimes go into medical
he just gave
debt
him the fucking
so that
left,
she could
right,
put
good night.
food on the table in our house.
Mike Tyson, baby.
I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford.
Dude.
We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor,
please.
Thank you, Margaret.
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
Oh, what do you got to say,
pal? Can you explain that discrepancy?
Well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400.
A yes or no could suffice.
You bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17.
Oh my God!
And then
Caitlin, did you put that up there?
To become a teacher.
Yes.
I'm passionate about it. A young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams,
to indoctrinate and groom them
teams,
into
we would take
communism,
dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community
everybody
knows who
gets
I am.
my money.
They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community.
Didn't answer the question yet.
I tried to do the best I can.
Oh, I'm waiting.
Perfect.
I'm waiting.
I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress,
I hope he did not answer the question yet.
I hope Vance makes him answer that question.
Like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota
he knows he lied.
Governor twice.
It's so ironic
look,
that's about Tiananmen too.
Has been from the beginning.
Because that's all about lies and deception.
There for the people. To make sure that I get this right.
Vance is like, bro, you ain't saying shit right now.
I will talk a lot. I will get caught
Here's
up
here's his response. Okay, boomer.
Being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case.
He basically said, I talk a lot.
On those trips with us. I guarantee you.
Yeah, so I just made it up.
Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you, he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing.
Matt said,
so
answer the question, bozo.
Understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out
Hell
there
yeah.
and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
He's waiting. Look at
been a
Vance.
minute.
Just to follow up
Look
on
at
that,
Vance.
the question was, can you explain?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just.
Oh my God. Yes.
So
There we go. Took you a fucking minute and a
in China
half, pal.
During the democracy protest went in. And from that,
Democracy
I learned a lot
protest?
of
What
needed to be in governance.
The murder?
Thank you,
What
Governor.
the hell?
Senator Vance,
What?
in 2016, you called your running mate
Chat,
Donald
should we
Trump
go back?
People over with
unfit
tanks.
for the nation's highest
Should we go back to
office,
that,
and you
chat?
said he could be America's Hitler. I know you said, you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington
These are
Post
really good
reported new
questions they
messages
have.
last week in which you also
Not so far.
disparaged
Not too
Trump's
bad.
economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice
This
president,
is kind of funny.
why should Americans
kinda like
trust that
Asian
you will
right now.
give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration, the first round, if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern.
Oh, no, it looked like you're going to say something. That's why.
Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
No, I already got it.
Time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion.
She said, bitch, you didn't even answer the question.
How great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us,
he's also evading the question.
It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication.
Women who are raped by illegal aliens have to.
The medical care at that point.
That's the question.
The doctor.
Yeah.
He is telling
careful
a folk legend right now.
She went home, got sepsis,
he is
nearly
telling
dies,
a very,
and now she may have difficulty
he's talking about
having
this like
children.
sepsis incident.
Or in Kentucky,
Any doctor who
Hadley
feels like
Duvall,
they
a
can't
12-year-old
perform
child
one of those
raped and
procedures that
impregnated
saves
by
a
her
life is
stepfather.
committing medical malpractice.
Those are horrific.
Right.
Now,
If
when
they
got asked about that, Senator Vance
our
said,
medical
two wrongs don't
practitioners
make
need
a
to be able
right.
to
There is
tell
no right
very
in this.
quickly if
So in
if
Minnesota,
someone is in
what
one of
we
those
did was
situations, and
restore
if they
Roe
fail to
versus
catch
Wade.
it, or if they
We made
make
sure
them
that we
wait,
put women
then
in
that's
charge
on
of their
that's on
healthcare.
those
But
doctors,
look,
and they need
this is
to
not what,
know
if you
how to
don't
deal with
know
that.
Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception.
Who did that?
And limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies.
Caitlin, applause.
Make it easier for young families to afford
you did the sound.
I mean,
afford a place.
I was talking about it on the sound.
Yeah. So much that we can do on the policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be
Walz
honest,
should decide for everyone.
A very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true.
I like
about
your style
Minnesota.
tonight.
Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman.
Should have been
she
drinking,
happened to be
man.
in Georgia, a restricted
I got
state.
some Crown.
Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman
Her
died
abortion or
in that
care?
journey.
Begin the medical malpractice cases.
The fact of the matter is, how can we as
go.
a nation
start the
say
lawsuits
that
against
your
the
life
doctors that are refusing
and
care?
your rights, as
Walz
basic
knows
as
this.
the right to control your own
This is a
body,
chat.
is determined on geography? There's a
that's
very
just what I'm
real
saying.
chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today.
Would have been a good chat.
That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice.
Pro-women.
We know what the implications are to not.
And
be
all
that.
women think alike.
Women
apparently.
having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted.
They all think like Walz.
And as far as making sure that we're
He talked
educating
about
our
physician
children and giving them
prosecutions,
options,
but the ones seem to be
Minnesota's a state
prosecuted are
with
the
one of
ones
lowest
who are
teen
not
pregnancy
helping these
rates.
women.
We
that he's talking
understand that
about.
too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state
There's Benny.
for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you.
Not
Amber
gonna-
Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law,
He's like, fuck, I
it says that
I
a
didn't know he knew
doctor
about that.
who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion.
Look at
That
Benny.
is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns
that's a voter blog.
to violate their freedom of conscience. We
Get
can
fucked.
be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of
You know,
conscience. and
Catholicism's
make the
on the
country
rise
more
with
pro-baby and
millennials.
pro-family, but
I
please.
believe. Is that
Yes,
true?
Governor,
Do you
please
know?
respond.
Yes.
Look, this
yeah,
is one where
there's a lot of
always
Catholic
something there.
converts
This
in
is
the
a very
millennial
simple
generation.
proposition. These are women's decisions to
I'm
make
talking
about their
about
healthcare decisions, and the
both
physicians
atheist
who know
converts
best when
and
they
like
need to do this.
denominational
Trying to
converts.
distort the way a law
I
is
can't-
written
That's me,
to
baby.
try and make a point, that's not it
Yeah,
at
I
all.
What was
can't
that
call
wrong
myself
about, Governor?
a Catholic.
Please tell me,
but
what
I
was
am.
that wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting against, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation
I
of
didn't
these
hear about
guys
that.
to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place.
But
When
yet
we
he
do
wants
a
to tell everyone how
restoration
they
of
have
Roe,
to
that works
do
best. That
things.
doesn't preclude
It's not
us
minding your
from
business.
increasing
It's
funding
minding
for
everyone
children.
else's
It doesn't
business.
increase us from making sure that once
Minding
that
our
child's born, like
business.
in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to
How are
make
you gonna
life
pay
easier
for
for
it?
families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact checked it with President Trump.
And that goes
Gentlemen,
through
there's a lot
our
to discuss.
taxes,
We have
right?
to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in
Caleb.
just a moment.
So, okay, I'm gonna. What were you saying there?
I said that goes through our taxes, right?
You're talking about
their
the
health care.
Yeah, like the plan to like give families monies and stuff like that.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
do I really want my taxes to go to abortions?
So I think that
I don't.
Like, I don't even mean this because I like Vance over Walz, but I think that so far tonight, and it seems a little bit, you know, I'll give Walz this. He's had to answer some tough questions, but he has not been able to actually muster any of a response. the closest thing that he got to admitting to one of his worst lies and things like that was the Tiananmen Square incident. And that felt like the least consequential one for him, but he's not backing any of his, like, he's not explaining why Roe was so good. He's just dependent on this monolith of ideas that he assumes all women have, is that it's this like autonomy, bodily autonomy argument versus the non-bodily autonomy argument, and not all women are on the same page. In fact, probably half the country is probably divided on that. Yeah.
If we're going to frame this in the terms of a fourth turning and things being decided at this point moving forward for the next few decades, right? For millennials, as they mature and Gen Z mature into adulthood and take the reins of power, what we've had in the past is the boomer position of Roe versus Wade. That's been in place for what, 50 something years. And now it's not. And they're trying to, claw it back into place for the next few decades. What do you guys think? You're both millennials. What do you think that's going to win? That position is going to come back, or do you think we're going to proceed in a new direction?
I'm actually a Gen Z.
So between like my Zillennial status and like his like Gen Z
Zillennial,
status,
there you go.
I think
that's better.
I think that here's the case. There was a time 50 years ago whenever Roe v. Wade was passed or not passed, but was decided, and it completely changed the culture for the decades going forward. People didn't really have a choice. They just kind of had to accept the precedent, the common law that was sort of formed around abortion. And now that we are seeing the common law change and it's back to more of a state's discretionary issue, there's going to be, in the same way that people began to sort of mold their worldview around the precedent of Roe, people are going to mold their worldview around the precedent of Dobbs, maybe not because they originated from the standpoint that Dobbs is a good thing, but more because it is something that they have come to know. So oftentimes, you have a group.
So
that's
it's
like,
more now about states' rights, states.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it oftentimes when something is fresh and new, you have a lot of critics, and then you have obviously the people that were rooting for that whole outcome in the first place, and you have those brackets. But eventually, there will be a class or a type of person who doesn't really give much thought to common law and things like that, but they'll just sort of, their worldview will change, and they'll start to naturally, like, they'll wake up, one day, and they'll value infant life, or like life in the womb a lot more preciously, whether it's a personal life incident that happens to them, or it's just the common law that's sort of having an effect on
culturally. What happened
culture.
at the time of Roe versus Wade, there was it's sexual revolutions, what the title of it is. It was a new thing, and people were interested in just having, open sex, free sex with a lot of partners, and taking drugs. And, some of these people were young, were getting shipped off to fight in Vietnam. So it was a whole cultural thing at the time.
Sex and drugs don't mix.
Millennials, I don't know exactly their attitude on sex, but it's not what it was at the time of Roe versus Wade. And I think maybe this view of how to govern and politically look at abortion is maybe reflective of where millennials are.
Yeah,
culturally.
I think millennials, I'll say this, like, of the generations, like, I think, and we're about to go back on the debate, I think that of the generations that sort of had the ripple effects from the sexual liberation of that time, I think the millennials might be the last generation to sort of engage in that type of freedom, because a lot of Zoomers, by contrast, are just like not having casual sex as much.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I've heard.
So I'll get the stream back on now.
Yeah, man.
So on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Keep the memes coming.
I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the San Diego parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted.
They understand that it's there, like it's like a spider in the corner.
Background checks, and we can start to get data.
Yeah, we see it over there.
If we really want to solve this,
is the average shooter in Minnesota.
That we should just live with it. And I here's what I do think.
Yeah, let's talk about
the start to the conversation.
The
trans believe that
dude
Senator Vance
that fucking ended up shooting the fucking school too, man.
And it breaks your heart. I agree with that.
But they don't want to talk about that.
That's not far.
They won't talk about it.
We know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen. Even though they have a high gun.
Let's go Finland.
Here we fucking go.
Things that we can do to make
good
a
example,
difference.
bro.
It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some
Let's
of
make
these
Finland
weapons
great
out
again.
there,
Let's make it
just
America's
doesn't make any
51st state.
sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there.
Scaremonger. It's such a
do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children
do we got blueprints of fucking walls?
They're
Hello?
Kids.
Are we building Fort Walls out here?
These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said.
Is he Catholic?
About Finland, because I do think it illustrates
that sounds like a Catholic.
Weird differences
he's
between
he's
our
actually a Catholic convert. I forgot to mention that earlier.
And Finland is.
We used to say that in church.
We have
in mass.
way higher rates of mental health abuse
when I was growing up as a Catholic.
Substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where My shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most
you know what he's talking about when he says that,
in
Kalen?
Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic
because you've probably never seen it. When I was younger,
themselves. And so
in the back of people's trucks, they had rifle racks, and they had rifles right behind their heads.
Be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you
drive around with a
rifle doesn't mean you're
right here behind your head.
And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns.
Real raw protection.
It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent.
No, it's energy.
There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes?
This is just going to bankrupt.
Handing out that kind of money
even further. I mean, like we're already so many trillions of dollars in debt.
First, let me say this.
And this is only going to cause the cost of homes to rise over time as well.
The problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life.
Sure, but what is $50,000 to a billionaire who is buying all that land and property?
I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this.
Yeah, we tried to give that to Biden, and look how that happened.
We in the state invested in making sure our housing
telling you, like,
was the
I can't trust Democrats with the money,
man. It starts
Rich
to make
billionaires
it easier
will
to cut some of the red tape.
They will happily pay the extra
we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes.
Like
and
the
then
markets
that down payment
will
assistance. I can tell all of you out
to
there,
everyone getting this free money put out.
Certainly for
and
me,
the cost
using the
difference
GI
is not
Bill
going to
was
matter
one
that
thing,
much.
but a veteran's home loan. The big thing about a veteran's home loan is
the adjustment.
You don't have to pay the down payment.
Like $58,000 is
those
like
are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing.
Immigrants
but we
and
can
giving
make
money
sure
to
that the
Ukraine.
government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance,
God, what a terrible finish.
As far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration.
How do you see something you already own?
Pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal immigrants, which does drive up costs.
Roundhouse.
25 million illegal aliens
competing
with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant.
I want to see Ramaswamy and him together
in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases.
This is a millennial
alien
Zoomer
populations
issue, big
under
time.
Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with.
I don't know
the
what
most
my
important
chances are
thing
in
here
buying
is
a home.
Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is
there.
the sitting vice president.
You got Trump, it'll be affordable.
You got to vote Trump, right?
To make housing more affordable. I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change
Boomers
the
have
equation
their
for American
houses. Gen
citizens?
Xers have their
If
houses.
you lower energy
Millennials,
prices, as Donald Trump says, drill,
Zoomers
baby,
need
drill,
housing.
one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Wow. I have it.
Where? Yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator,
So
where are you going to seize the federal
Walz.
lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national parks.
Everyone, smash that like button. We're trying to get more people in here.
Build a lot of housing.
Smash
we
that
want you
button.
Zoomers and millennials to
Smash
smash it.
We have a
Don't
lot
forget to
of
visit
land
our
that could be
YouTube
used. We have a lot of
our Twitch.
Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes. And we should be
come
building more
on.
homes for the American
Yeah, no
citizens.
kidding.
who
That's what he
deserve to be here.
did right there.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office.
But the cat
But
memes,
it's, again,
it's true.
blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land?
Oh,
And I think when
man.
people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry
People
about
can
this as
move
someone
where
who
there's
cares
better
deeply about our
opportunities.
national parks
Fucking
and our
kidding,
federal
man.
Yeah,
lands.
exactly.
Look at
People don't know how
Oklahoma.
to move.
Look at
We've got
Texas.
about
We want
20%
to
of
keep
the
their
world's
tax
fresh
dollars in
water. These
Minnesota.
lands protect.
We
They're
can't let
there
these
for a
people
reason. They
leave.
belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this.
They got to be able to afford the
Economists.
houses, you ding
Senator
dong.
Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's
your
the study?
time is
Have
is
you
up.
seen
Senator,
California,
on that
brother?
point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources.
You guys remember Trump's Freedom Cities idea?
Wants to throw people in jail
His which idea?
for not doing
His Freedom
everything
Cities?
exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do.
It was something he mentioned earlier this year. He wanted to create Freedom Cities.
New Freedom Cities, yes, I do remember
I
this.
agree with Tim Walz. We should
Like
get out of this
a city
idea
from
of
scratch.
housing as a commodity. But the
Yeah,
thing
Chad,
that
what do you
has
guys think
most
about
turned
Freedom
housing
Cities?
into
The
a
idea of
commodity
like
is giving it away
basically
to
like
millions upon
it would
millions of
depend on what
people
state you
who
put
have
them
no
in.
legal right to be here.
yeah.
What are the federal
I feel like it's like the
regulations? I
idea
deal
of
with this
like
as
a
governor.
like a co-op, but
You
like
can
on a
very
grander
quickly
scale.
reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations,
Shouldn't
people
you
think
know?
they can get rid of them. I think you
We're
want to
trusting
be able
you
to get out of
to
your
be the
house in a
vice
fire.
president.
I think
You
you want
don't
to
know
make
this
sure that it's
information.
fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen,
Somebody else's
we
fault.
have a lot to get through.
What he
You're
just said.
passionate about the housing crisis.
Whatever,
I
man.
can tell.
That's such a
But
fucking
Nora?
cop out.
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked
This is easy.
about
More
replacing
government,
the
less
Affordable
government.
Care Act. In response, he said, I have concepts of a plan.
Yeah, he's like
Since
such
then,
a he's like
Senator,
such
you've
a
talked about
pessimist, and
changing
like
how
Vance is like
chronically
such an
ill
optimist.
Americans
Like he
get
has
health insurance.
that's the
Can you
problem too, is
explain
that as you
how
get
that would
older,
work And can you guarantee
eventually
that Americans
millennials, they could be the doomers, but for now it's the boomers.
Pay more?
Because they're,
I'll give you 2 minutes.
because they're too old. They don't.
We're going to cover
think about
the boomers
like
are trying to hang on to their power.
A lot of my family
they don't think about
members have
things like
gotten
sending
healthcare.
younger generations
I believe,
to war
members
as much
of
as
my
a
family
millennial
actually got
leader would.
private health insurance, at least
It's
for the
basically
first
like,
time.
when we
Switched off
die,
of Medicaid
it's
onto
y'all's
private
problem.
insurance for the first time.
It's like,
Donald
it shouldn't
Trump's
even be a
leadership.
problem
But I
to
think
begin
it's
with.
True.
a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody
More
to
community,
tears,
right.
and it wouldn't actually
True.
mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan
Thanks.
negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was
Joe the
actually
goat.
president, and
Joe
again,
the
Meme
goat.
Ranch is a
Never.
community, by the way. We
prescription
want you
drugs
here
fell in
giving your
2018 for
commentary
the first time
with
in a
us.
very long
Sure
time.
do.
Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%.
Thanks for
Under
joining,
Donald
Joe.
Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%.
Yeah, Meme Ranch
He
could be considered a
introduced
freedom city.
pricing transparency.
Hell
Think
yeah,
about
Meme
healthcare.
Ranch.
That's
You
a
go to a
great-
hospital,
great
you try
way
to
to
buy
say it.
something, and nobody knows
The museum
what it
is the
actually
town
costs.
square.
That price transparency
Hell
will
yeah.
actually give American
Freedom City
consumers
on
a
American-
little bit more choice.
Don't forget to join
and will
our,
also drive down costs. And we talked about
Discord,
the
guys.
reinsurance regulations is what I was
Yeah, I
talking
have
about.
that
What
link.
Donald Trump
I got a
has
link
said
right here for
that if we
y'all.
allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States, and I think you can make a really good argument.
I think
that it
both sides are
salvaged
gonna claim
Obamacare, which
they
was
won
doing
this debate.
disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point
Walz
about
didn't
President
fumble.
Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said.
Yeah, but I
or
think
ever
that, like,
done. But
yeah, I
when
agree with you, but I think
Obamacare
that
was crushing under
there are
the
a
weight
lot
of
of
its own
people, even
regulatory
on the
burden
Trump
and
side,
healthcare
who are
costs, Donald
a
Trump
little
could have
bit
destroyed the
nervous
program.
right
Instead,
immediately afterwards.
he
I
worked in a
think
bipartisan
I
way
think
to
that
ensure
people's
that
guts will
Americans
tell
had
them that
access
Vance
to
won this, and I
affordable
think their
care.
guts will be
It's
right.
not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And
Boomer.
the reason it was so important is
Boomer.
I come from a major healthcare state, home
Boomer.
of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those.
Throw a meme
we
in there,
understand healthcare.
Leon.
It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I
don't
know
have any
is
new
under
ones, so
Kamala
I'll just
Harris,
put this one.
more people are covered than they have before. Those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald
That's
Trump
good.
all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He
Obama.
signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing
John
conditions.
McCain, man,
if
he's
you're
like
sitting at home and you got
just
He
such a
screwed the
mythos.
if
team.
you're a woman,
He
probably
screwed the
not.
team.
Broke your foot.
He's
during
such a
football,
mythos in the
might kick you out.
Democratic
Your kids get kicked out
canon.
when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug
Meghan
prices for the
McCain is
first
just there to
time
like carry on
with
his legacy
Medicare.
on
We
like the
have
mainstream
10
news.
drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll
Nailed
be there.
it.
But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a
And
concept of
get
a plan,
paid for it as
cracked
well.
me up as a fourth grade
Oh, yeah,
teacher
get paid
because
big
my kids
time.
would have never given me that. But what
I met
Senator
McCain.
Vance just explained might be worse
His
than
daughter?
concept. Because what
No,
he
I met John
explained is
McCain in his
pre-Obamacare.
office.
And I'll make this as
Oh,
simple
wow.
as possible because
I've told you
the
the story, but he really came off as an
What they're
insane
saying is,
individual.
if you're healthy,
Damn.
why should you be
Did you ask
paying
him to
more?
lift his arms?
So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who
No.
they insure because
That
guess
was
what
a sick
happens?
joke.
You pay your premium, it's not much. They're figure they're not going to have to
They
pay
were
out
broken
to you.
in
But
concentration
those of you a little
camps.
older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing pre-existing conditions. But again,
yeah,
something that these guys do.
I'll wait for
is
Vince
they
to
make
finish
a lot of claims
before we get
about
to
if
that.
Donald Trump becomes president,
Totally agree,
all of these
though.
terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation
He's
was
shaking
low.
his head like,
Take-home
yeah,
pay
we
was
do
higher,
that.
and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free
I just want to say something about this comment about, the hurricane and
I think the idea
everything
of
that's happening right now and the tensions people are facing. I think that
when it doesn't, it collapses.
The invasion there in Lebanon and the retaliation from Iran and everything that's cooking up right now in this country, I think it's gearing up for a smooth landing for Trump to win. And
if we don't get in a war,
I mean the strikes too. I mean, assuming the election process, there's nothing funny happening there. Like, I think people have to choose something different. They have to vote not for Donald Trump, but just something different from this administration. And I think that is what's going to be the deciding factor for Trump. The people that turn over for him, they may not be the biggest fans of him, but they have to vote for something different.
They need representation.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better.
Do you want them aborted or alive? And
so Kamala Harris has made it a
which
priority.
is it?
We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see
I'm
growth.
confused.
That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue: those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at
so
both
many
the supply
businesses
and
can't
the demand
afford
side.
that.
You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this.
We're going to see more. We're going to see more issues pop up. No matter who wins this election, there's going to be more things that test the metal, and we're going to have to make hard choices about what we want in the future. So this is a feature the next 5 years. You're going to see more and more of things being tested, and then we're having to make very hard choices.
I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who's an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. but being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company, but the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach.
Should get more
I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have
that shouldn't
support
be
paid family leave
any kind of like
now,
sexism
the
barrier or anything
community
like that.
development
Like,
block grant,
it should be
block grant
unequal
program
as
that
far
spends
as
a
the
lot of
amount
money
of
from the federal
time
government.
you get off.
These programs
that could
only
translate
go
to
to
other
one
things
kind of
because
child care model.
men
Let's say
get more
you'd like your
time to
church
work
maybe
versus
to
women,
help you
so
out with
they
child
naturally,
care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to
they
get
don't ever
together
quit their, they don't
with
really ever
families in your
cease their work,
neighborhood to provide
unless
child
maybe
care
they're
in the
taking
way
care of
that
the
makes the
kid.
most sense. You don't get
But
access to any of these federal
once women
monies.
have children,
We want to promote
that instinct
choice
kind
and how
of
we
takes
deliver
over
family
about
care and how
being
we
a
promote
mom.
child care.
Yeah,
Because look,
a lot of them
it
have
is
to have an
unacceptable.
ultimatum if they want to stay
And, you know, of course,
in the
Tim and I have been on the
workforce
campaign trail a
or
lot the past 7 or 8
become a
weeks.
full-time
And
mom,
one of
and
the
that's
biggest complaints I
fine.
hear from young
Or at least
families
or
is
work
people
part-time,
who
whatever.
feel like
I'm
they
just saying,
don't
like,
have
they want to be
options,
involved with their
like
kids'
they're
lives.
choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President
Housing's
Trump
too high.
recently said,
Way too fucking high.
as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here
Oh,
a little
he's-
bit,
he's
is
got
that
the little hand
we're going to be
thing.
taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs
Well,
overseas,
this is
and
actually what I
penalizing
said.
countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for
This
businesses
is going to
that
be
are
big, you
hiring and
guys.
building companies in
Jobs
the United States of America.
coming back.
But penalize
True.
companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas.
We're going to
That's the
see
heart of the
infrastructure
economic
being
proposal.
built
And I
at
think what
lightning
President
speed.
Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options.
The boomers
that are
send all the
viable
jobs
and workable
overseas.
for a lot of American
Millennials
families.
and Zoomers are going to bring them back.
Yep.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Like this.
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortages, we just don't have enough
Dude, as
resources
soon as he says
going
Tim, he
into
goes,
the multiple people who could be providing
Squirrel.
family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately,
sees the
we're
squirrel.
going to have to spend more money.
You have
We're
any
going to have
squirrel
to induce
noises?
more people
I
to
do.
want
I
to
don't know.
provide
I
child
think
care
I do.
options for American families.
Where's my fursuit?
The reason it's so expensive right now is
Oh
because
my
you've got
God,
way
please.
too few people providing this very essential service.
That's right. I said it. Fuck
Thank
you,
you, Senator.
furries.
Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money,
She just wants
pay
to be
for that,
elected.
they're $4,000 in the hole. That's
Right.
Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a
Joe.
state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy.
Damn, what is everyone
inflation.
thinking so far?
After the 2020 election,
what do you think the media is going to paint this
campaign
debate
and
as?
others filed 62 lawsuits contesting
The media is going to try and find a way to
those appointed by
carry
President
forward
Trump
what
and other Republican
Walz was
presidents,
saying,
looked at the evidence
and then say those were
and
winning
said there was no
answers for
widespread
the issues
fraud.
that people care about.
The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal
on the Trump ticket. I think people are going to say they like Vance after this.
For January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it.
Yes.
Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that
That's
Donald
what Trump
said
too.
Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships and disagreements over politics.
Chat, let us know if he's speaking facts. Put your thoughts in there.
I'll let you know he is.
And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation.
Thank God for MAGA.
I think that is a much bigger threat to
democracy. We also got 7 people right now on
YouTube.
Thank you so much.
In the last 4 years, in the last
if you're on YouTube, leave a like
I'm really proud,
and a live comment. Join our conversation here. We'd love to hear you.
We are the Meme Ranch, and we're building this community for you guys out there, guys and gals,
leaders in the Democratic coalition. Of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate. I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story.
This is our scapegoat.
Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't
they were all beaten by FBI agents, too.
This is your regularly scheduled government programming coming in to give you an informative fact check about the J6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Do not listen to what Abraham Lincoln Part 2.0 is saying. He is not that cool. Just because he looks like a young, handsome Abraham Lincoln does not mean he's that cool. Do not listen.
And over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can.
Isn't that what happened?
The other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of
Joe Biden said what?
At the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose.
Kamala said what?
But to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, We need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop.
All
It's
right.
tearing our country
We'll hold you
apart.
to it, Walz.
Margaret?
Or the
Senator
people
Vance,
who
did
are
you
in
wanna
the
respond to that?
Senate and
Yeah,
the
well, look,
House
Tim,
who are saying there's going to
first of
be
all, it's really
civil
rich
war
for
conditions.
Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look,
What
I
is that kind of rebuttal?
don't understand how we got to this point.
January 6th was
But
not
the issue
Facebook
was
ads. They were
that happened.
Instagram ads.
Donald Trump.
Yes,
didn't
they
do it.
were.
And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think
Gay
for everyone
books.
tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen.
It's your
And
democracy.
It manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
Yes.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for
Hillary
not believing in
complains
democracy.
how
The most
she didn't
sacred
lose
right under
in
the United States
2016.
democracy is the First Amendment.
Still.
You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people
got him
from
on the
speaking
ropes
their
a
minds.
little bit there.
That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this
That's
present
good.
political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans
he
to
looks
both
so
reject
mad.
censorship.
does.
Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute.
Hell
to respond
yeah.
to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a
But they
candidate
do
out
run
there
Facebook.
who refused, and now
Oh
again,
my
and this, I'm
gosh.
pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not. It's not anything anywhere other than in
You run Hollywood.
Donald Trump's world.
You run
Because
the
look,
universities. You
when
run
Mike Pence
Facebook. You ran
made that
Twitter.
decision to certify
on,
that
bruh.
election. That's why
You run
Mike
the
Pence
schools.
isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is
You run the
where
media.
is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows
What do you mean
he
by
could
that?
do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up?
How
Will you
is
keep
how
your
is Trump
oath of
going to take the
office,
election
even
when
if the president
Kamala
doesn't?
Harris
And I
is
think
in
Kamala
charge right now?
Harris would
She
agree.
is the
She wouldn't have
incumbent.
picked me if she didn't think I
If
would
Trump
do
loses
that.
again,
Because of
what
course
can he
that's what we
do?
would do.
He is
So
a private
America, I think
citizen.
you've got a really clear choice on this
Oh, you know, the
election
MAGA,
of who's
million
gonna
MAGA
honor that
army out there
democracy
that's gonna-
and who's going to honor Donald
Or,
Trump.
I don't know.
Governor,
Complain
your
online.
time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
Yeah, true. Joe, this is definitely
Okay.
this is definitely a big brow or a highbrow. You could say debate. There's a lot of policy being talked about here, way more than there was when Trump and Harris were on stage, and that just got so diluted, and no one really talked much about the detailed substance of the policy. It was all this surface level stuff, and this is a lot more in the weeds. And I do think that in the on the weeds material, Vance is killing it here. He's really able to spin around any jab that's coming his way. And the unfortunate side is that less people will be aware of this conversation, this debate that happened, than they were the Trump and Harris debate. There's definitely going to be people that just did not watch a second of this. So thank you guys for tuning in and watching it with us. That's
I want to at some point, maybe we need to dissect what was the responses given by both people, both candidates here, and figure out where the millennial answer is and where the boomer answer is, and make note of that as we continue this conversation forward on the rest of the election. Because I think there is distinct lines. And like you said, a lot of it has been lost in the weeds. But if we frame it in the perspective of like a boomer and a millennial, I think people can understand that better.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why he's the MVP. That's why he's the GOAT.
Real shit. So what does it mean for you? I mean, we're talking about this millennial boomer conversation a lot, and you know, what does it mean for someone like you, XVALA, who you kind of exist in this like timeless generation? Like you could be you could have the mentality of a Gen Xer, a millennial, a Zoomer. Like you're kind of timeless, because I forgot what generation you are, but you are a boomer, right?
For real?
Or no, you're Gen X.
I'm Gen X.
Gen X.
Yeah.
I'm about as Gen X as they come. I'm like right in the middle of the generation.
That's why he's XVALA, man.
It is why I'm XVALA.
Partially.
As an artist, I would say that I do see all perspectives. I do see, and I've experienced boomers in my experience in life have been in charge. They've been like the most selfish, self-centered generation I could describe, because before I was around, they were the hippies. Okay. And then as I grew a little older, they became the yuppies. So everything's been culturally centered around their experience, their American experience.
Old as fuck.
I wasn't trying to call you old as fuck. I was trying to just kind of tease.
I am what I am. So I'm Gen X, but what I'm pointing to here is that boomers, the politics we've had in the past has been boomer politics. They are holding the reins of power, and they're trying as hard as they can. Pelosi, all those people are trying to retain the power. What we're seeing here is a power struggle between boomer perspective and millennial perspective. And I'm putting that on JD Vance, even though he's with Trump. I could argue with you that Trump is actually very millennial in his thinking. So this is what we're going to be. Are we going to hang on to some of the boomer politics? Or are we going to fully embrace a millennial Zoomer perspective going forward? Gen X, I don't think really weighs into this. They're going to be the generals that guide us, whichever, like the policies are going to be coming from millennials. They're going to be coming from Zoomers, not from Gen X people.
Yeah, this is the boomer face that you have to watch the next 4 years. If you know, the worst case scenario happens. Yeah, you get to watch this guy watch.
He does look like a squirrel, a scared squirrel.
No, he kept looking to the left.
He's like a squirrel chaser.
Yeah, he's a squirrel chaser.
What do you guys think? I think okay, here we go.
And elected to go last. So Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters.
Boomer.
It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built. From Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us,
Freedom
and as
to
Maya
chop
Angelou
off
said,
your
believe him when he
ding-a-ling
told you that. His first
and walk
inaugural
around in
address talked about
pigtails.
American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road.
MAGA.
Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you,
Not
I'm going to be
MAGA.
careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to
Yeah, that
thrive.
was a product
I humbly
placement.
ask for your vote on November 5th for
Taylor
Kamala Harris.
Governor
Weak.
Walz, thank
Weak.
you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies.
Oh, dang.
I believe that whether you're rich or
That
poor,
was
you ought to
strong.
be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's
Winter is
gotten
coming.
harder because of Kamala Harris's
Dude,
policies.
he's
I
just-
believe that
this
whether
is
you're
what
rich or
he's
poor,
doing.
you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not
Waltz?
have your communities flooded with fentanyl.
Waltz like,
and
"Ugh."
that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long
God,
enough to do
damn,
what Kamala
Vance.
Harris does when she stands before
Wait, can
the
you do that one
American
more time?
people and says that
Which
on
one?
day
The
one,
lean back.
she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to
Little
ask
pump
me
in the
how I'm
house.
doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most
No pump.
incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new
Yep.
direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote
This is
for
a closing
Tim Walz,
right here.
I
This
just
is
want
good.
to say, I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you.
Need
Good
that
night.
Applause
Senator
button.
Vance, thank you.
I got it.
And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at
All
CBS
right.
News, thank
Time
you.
for the
and
memes.
good
Let's
night.
Stick around
go,
for the
baby.
memes.
Let's go. What a
Stick around
fucking
for all
debate.
those. Oh, there they go. There they go, shaking.
That's what's up.
All right, we're gonna have a little roundup, meme ranch roundup of everything that we're seeing online about this debate.
Fucking Vance for 2029, man.
That was really strong. Let's
Vance
see
for
what
2029.
He may be the first millennial president.
I hope so.
here's a tribute that someone uploaded to Vance's victory. DMCA.
That was
for
a good one. I like that.
Chat, how are we feeling about this?
Holy shit.
I think that was beautiful. Let's get some more of those.
Dude,
This
this
freaking-
fucking side
this-
eye, man. Good shit.
This is gonna become people's AVIs for a little while.
Yeah.
Is there any more? We need to find some more that map.
Some more memes.
Right here. I mean, this is basically like the overarching meme of the night, like the
Make it bigger.
Jim from Jim from The Office.
Oh, you can't do it. My bad.
You know, to try to do it.
Yeah.
I don't trust that Tim guy.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Man, everyone's so obsessed with this clip. It's crazy.
It's a meme. It's a truly shared culture.
That's a meme.
So Walz by Vance.
Man.
Oh my gosh.
What a debate.
What is
I think
what is
this
Greg
is
saying? Why do I get the feeling that Vance and Walz are going to stop at the pub next door and have a beer together when this debate is done?
Tim was all sound bites.
Nah. I think it's past Walz' bedtime.
No kidding, man.
I
Put that ass to sleep.
This was really historic because we really did get to see politics of the past versus politics of the future. It was very well defined tonight.
Truly, yeah. Can we go back to that China clip? That someone
clipped
clipped
things
that.
that I think are the values
China.
that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just...
Oh, brother.
So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protest went in.
Democracy
and
protest.
I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you.
Those are the
So
things
awkward
that I think
after
are
that. Such an awkward response from that. Was
Democracy
this the same fumble?
protest.
At least Tiananmen Square protests.
Yeah,
Hold on. I got to make a point here, Kaylin. He's calling Tiananmen Square a democracy protest, right? And he acts like J6 was some bad, like worse than... They act like it was worse than Tiananmen Square, but people were run over by tanks in Tiananmen Square. I mean, thousands of people died, right? Or 1,000, something like that.
Yeah, it would be better to call it like like to talk more about like what China did to the people during the democracy push. Like there was a push by the people for democracy. It wasn't necessarily a democracy protest. It was more like a democratic cry for help because we're being beaten in the streets.
But he's saying, but the claim was that he was over there during Tiananmen Square, right?
Yeah, and he wasn't even.
But he's calling that event a democracy protest, where the people were redressing the government, and the government butchered him. And in J6, he's acting like that was the end of the republic or something.
Yeah, it's interesting how the talking points don't really...
Yeah, they should just call that a democracy protest. And
yeah, exactly.
He's a phony! A great big phony! Excuse me, ma'am.
This is Walz. That's basically the effect that he had there, Frank.
Yeah, you're right. Good call.
All right.
JD Vance is a gangster. We're almost
Tim
done.
Said something that I agree
Just
with.
getting
We
a little
don't want to
roundup.
blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country.
That was such a roundhouse.
Which does drive up cost, Tim.
I mean, it went
25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers.
He said, "Oh shit!"
In the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership.
And
now,
he
first of all,
called them illegal aliens on top of it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of spin over this. A lot of spin and a lot of people around the country that don't care whatsoever because it's not the big names. So
I think that this helped people understand in the Trump voting crowd, the people who are considering Trump, really to understand the Trump ticket.
Yeah.
Right?
Truly, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of independents who chimed in because independents know that they're going to get a more robust policy-based argument debate when it comes to VPs. And they're usually a bit more tuned into the electoral process, even though they're the hardest people to win over. And so, but that's why they watch these things. You know, that's why a lot of independents are interested in these.
If
but
we're
as for,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I
didn't really have
this mask,
anything else to say.
I was going to say, if we stream tomorrow, we'll definitely dive more into the differences between the millennial perspective and the boomer perspective politically.
Sure.
Yeah, we got a thumbnail already ready for you guys on the next episode, where we talk more about the generational theories that we're interested in here on the Meme Ranch. A lot of what our body of work that will be coming out in the coming months surrounds generational theories. So
both the documentaries as well.
Yeah, exactly. So smash that like button again, and definitely join our Discord. That's where we want to start having more robust conversations about these ideas. So join that Discord. It'll make Meme Ranch even better. It'll make your experience even better, because we'll be able to start looking at the things that you all want to flag.
That's the GOAT.
If you want to flag something to us, we'll look at it. If you join our Discord and post in there what you want to hear us talk about next.
I want to shout out real quick Meme Prophet. The GOAT. Okay, Meme Prophet is a documentary I've been working on since the first Trump election, and it's going to end when we have the next inauguration. And basically the pitch of it is that it's a group of young patriots who followed Donald Trump and his Make America Great Again meme to the White House to save America for future generations. That's basically what happens in the documentary. And we're going to follow a lot of people you've probably heard about in the MAGA movement. We've had access and filmed this since 2017 at different events, different MAGA events, different things, not even necessarily associated with politics, people you've definitely heard of, notorious people, and we have had the camera on them. So that's Meme Prophet, and you can see more about it at memeranch.com. Kaylin, if you want to pitch your documentary, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a Trump trial documentary all about the coverage and people who were trying to get into the Trump trial earlier this summer. And it's about the time and place and the image that was captured there during that historic event, during that sham trial.
Dude, it follows you.
Yeah, it does follow me. It follows my journey through that and the people that I encountered along the way. And it is an excellent snapshot of this time that we're experiencing here in the fourth turning, when the most democratic leader of the free world is being persecuted live on the center of the universe stage, the Manhattan courthouse. Now we got people like Diddy and the mayor of New York City getting indicted. It's getting wild out there. More and more lawfare is probably going to, come until we get somebody in charge to stabilize everything that's happening. That's not to say that, I think Trump's case is very distinct from most other cases that we're seeing right now, and that they're using hatched fringe legal strategies in order to get him. And I think that they're using the lawfare against other people like Democrats as coverage to say, like, oh, we're not attacking Donald Trump, we're going after everyone. Or the law has no bias or whatever, but it's just a ruse for sure.
Yep.
So anyway, both these documentaries are being produced by Meme Ranch, and they will be out probably into this year, first of next. It's just an ongoing production. We're going to be in Butler this weekend, filming at the return of Donald Trump to Butler, Pennsylvania. We hope to have media passes for that, so we'll have some inside access, and I will have the gold MAGA hat there, letting people try it on. 24 karat gold MAGA hat. So we will have more things to talk about after we get back from Butler. So thanks for joining us tonight.
I got a message, man. I got a message, all right? Y'all better vote! That's right. I'm talking Trump 2025, baby. Woo! Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Get in them ballots. Get in them votes. We winning.
Oh my gosh.
Signing out.
There you go. You got it. All right.
Yeah.
You want to end the stream?
Well, I wanted to, but someone's asking about a Discord link. Check the description in this video. I think the link there should be working, but if not, we'll We'll get you on the next time around.
Worked. Cool beans.
All right. Chill. Peace, everyone.
See you, boys. Vote.
Make love.
Vote
not
MAGA.
war. MAGA meme ranch.